This podcast is published by the educational team of the Destroyer Escort Historical Museum. By 1944, what would eventually be known as the American military-industrial complex was humming along at 200%. The U.S. Navy was now the largest Navy in history by far. New Allied technologies were entering the battlefield. Tides of war had turned everywhere. In desperation, after the stunning defeats of the Battle of the Philippine Sea and the Battle of Leyte Gulf, Japan had invented the Kamikaze attack. Basically, it was a human-guided cruise missile. This initiated a fast and deadly tactical chess game, one that transformed naval and aviation tactics for the next 50 years, including guided cruise missiles, advanced radar warning systems, computational machines, i.e. computers, and smart weapons, stealth technologies, and wide-area anti-air defense networks. Tactical successes and failures also influenced Japanese strategy. The war evolved into a fatalistic war of attrition, Ketsugo. After Nazi Germany was defeated in the spring of 1945, destroyer escorts like the USS Slater were refitted for service in the Pacific. The primary focus shifted from anti-submarine warfare to anti-air defense. When you tour the Slater today, she reflects the changes made during that period. In early August, the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Navy, Admiral King, published an anti-suicide action summary. This document was classified as secret, probably above the pay grade of destroyer escort personnel. At that time, the USS Slater was in transit to the Pacific Theater. Undoubtedly, some of the information would be disseminated to them. The Japanese Air Force was estimated to have approximately 9,000 planes that were conserved for suicide attacks. This was 8 times larger than the force employed at Okinawa. It was anticipated that their effort will focus on the amphibious operation and their logistics. Troop and cargo transports, the type of ship that destroyer escorts will escort. In the past, the attacks had been against big ships, battleships, aircraft carriers, and cruisers. Japanese learned that these attacks were more effective against smaller ships, like destroyers and destroyer escorts, and the ships that they protect. Since the Japanese were running out of resources, all types of planes were going to be used, float planes and training planes. Since these planes were relatively easy to shoot down in daylight, they were going to be used at night. They learned to improvise. Crude planes powered by rockets were being developed. They learned that simple wooden planes like trainers were stealthy. Proximity fuses, which depended on radar, were less effective. Admiral King's summary, Commenge P0011, noted specific operating practices. The last, and not the least, was training. Released at the same time were training materials like Combat Bulletin No. 66. This 1945 film showed scenes of ships battling attackers, animated diagrams explaining Japanese tactics, and recommended countermeasures for kamikaze attacks.
Aircraft are employed to crash dive ships of Allied fleets. This film presents highlights from a resume of information to date on the suicide threat. Also, the counter tactics and countermeasures developed through experience with such attacks. Specially trained kamikaze units and pilots, hastily organized into suicide attack parties, strike at the fleet with a reckless spirit defined as typical of the Japanese mind applying itself to military problems. To these enemy flyers, there can be no more honorable death than self-immolation in a crash of flame on the deck of one of our warships. Principal differences between suicide plane attacks by the Japanese on a large scale and the conventional airplane attack are as follows. Range of enemy attack is greater because no return trip is necessary. higher percentage of hits because missile is aimable right up to the point of contact. Suicide pilots are more determined than daring and are not deterred by actual or psychological obstacles. The suicide plane, with or without a bomb, is an extremely effective incendiary agent because of the gasoline carried. Any type of approach may be expected: deep and shallow dives and low-level runs. The enemy continually varies his type of attack. One recent method has been to approach at low altitude from the bow or astern, parallel to the ship's course, thereby reducing AA fire, and when opposite the ship to execute a wing-over and crash into the bridge. In order to effect surprise, a suicide plane may approach over land to avoid radar detection. At low altitude below the radar horizon, in vicinity of or following friendly planes in order to render identification difficult. Use cloud cover. Use maximum speed. Approach from direction of sun or during low visibility. Employ simultaneous multiple attacks using one or more planes as decoys. Regarding the use of radar, the Navy reports that standard surface and air search radars have limitations which make early warning of approaching suicide craft difficult to obtain, particularly near large land masses and in bays, gulfs, or harbors. Presence in the area of owned planes split into many groups makes accurate tracking an arduous procedure, and it's therefore possible for a few enemy aircraft to get close to the target undetected. The Navy's recently introduced SP radar improves detection of low-flying planes and the altitude determination for fighter direction. Numerous recommendations for countermeasures have been made by officers of the fleet who've experienced suicide attacks. Greatest emphasis is placed on Navy gunnery, calling for heavier concentrations of AA fire. The directive is to open fire early, accurately, and in volume, and to keep on shooting. Hitting the source of the attacks before they can be launched. Employing carrier planes, the Navy has found the following methods most effective. Fighter sweeps of enemy airfields to destroy planes on the ground and airborne over the fields. Bombing of the airfields to destroy fixed installations. Use of long delay fuses to harass enemy activities at the airfields. Night fighter and intruder missions to prevent the enemy from flying reinforcements into or operating from his fields during the night. Recognition is vital. All friendly aircraft must be indoctrinated to return to their own dispositions with IFF on. The Navy also states that they should be alert for enemy aircraft returning close to or with them, and if unable to attack the enemy planes, should advise their own base. Whenever possible, friendly planes should join up to return in large groups and not confuse radar operators with many small formations in the area. Friendly planes must avoid flying close to formations of surface vessels. When imperative for friendly planes to approach surface vessels, the planes must take care to do so in a manner which cannot be construed as hostile. IFF must be checked for operation. Radio communication should be established. Definite prearranged altitudes and courses must be flown, and at night running lights must be turned on. The Navy points out that suicide planes emphasize the importance of its lookout technique and calls for daily recognition training. Lookouts are directed to confine their attention to assigned sectors, even during attacks, and to avoid sightseeing and distraction. In discussing firepower, distribution of targets is stressed, referring to ships of a formation as well as to guns of a single ship. The Navy discourages concentrated fire at a single suicide plane while allowing others to approach unnoticed. No easy solution exists, but each ship and group is told to work out and enforce a system based on its own characteristics. VT fuses are recommended as extremely effective against suicide planes. Their limitation is their arming distance, 400 to 800 yards, and difficulty in getting the 5-inch gun aimed at the target and loaded quickly enough. Training to reduce this time and increase local control effectiveness is called for, so that VT-fused projectiles may be used in greater numbers. Additional data on Kamikaze Tactics is available through naval intelligence based on action reports, enemy propaganda broadcasts, prisoners of war, captured documents, and eyewitness accounts.
I'm not sure if the officers of the Slater ever saw Combat Bulletin number 66. On August the 6th and August the 9th, the United States detonated 2 atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. At noon on the 15th of August, Tokyo time, Emperor Hirohito made a radio announcement conceding defeat and calling for the military to lay down their arms. On September 2nd, 1945, the war was officially over. Perhaps you have a topic of interest. Let us know in the comments section. And be sure to like and subscribe to encourage us to do more and to stay in the information loop. And thanks for watching.